We're going to simplify complex fractions with monomial denominators. So this is a complex fraction. It's a fraction inside, it's fractions inside a bigger fraction. So there's two methods. The first method is going to be to rewrite the problem and put all these things together. The second method is definitely going to be more convenient going forward, but this should at least explain to you why all this is happening. So we could rewrite this as division. So what we have is 25 x squared minus y squared over xy, and that is being divided by 5 over y minus 1 over x. So the second fraction is actually a subtraction problem, so you have to combine those together. So 5 over y minus 1 over x, we would need to get a common denominator. So now both denominators are xy, and our fraction would be 5x minus y over xy. So 5x minus y over xy is our second fraction once we put that together, and our first fraction stays the same. All right, dividing fractions. We keep the first fraction. We multiply these expressions, and we are going to flip our second fraction. So it's the same rules for multiplying fractions that you learned in elementary school. Now we just have complicated problems. So the numerator and denominator both have an xy. So because when you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across, we can divide those out right now. And now we're left with these other polynomials. The hardest part about doing these problems is you need to be able to look and recognize what's happening. This numerator is a difference of two squares, which means that can be factored. That's actually going to factor, and you're going to get 5x plus y times 5x minus y as your numerator. The xy's have been divided, and your denominator is 5x minus y. So once you recognize that numerator can be factored and you factor it, now we have another common factor that we can divide out. So the 5x minus y's are going to divide. And your answer at the end is going to be 5x plus y once everything else is gone. So again, this is just the first method of how to do it. There is a much easier method that's going to help with polynomial denominators and as problems get a little more complicated. So I'll show you how to do the same problem using that second method. So the second method is really just to identify the least common denominator and multiply everything. And the purpose of that is to eliminate all denominators. Most students do not like fractions. What makes a fraction is the denominator. So if we can get rid of the denominators, we don't have any more fractions. As long as we are mathematically making legal moves, then we're good to go. So our denominators are xy, y, and x. So we actually just did the LCD in the first example. The LCD is just going to be x times y if we split it up. We can get an x times y in every single denominator if we needed to through multiplication. So now that we have this x times y, everything is going to multiply. So we're taking xy we're going to multiply it to the fraction on top, and we're going to multiply it to the fractions in the denominator. So really what we're doing is we're doing xy over xy times this. So we're multiplying by 1 to keep everything consistent. The purpose of this is to eliminate the denominators. So in the numerator of our problem, there's an xy in the denominator, and now I'm multiplying an xy on top, so those will reduce. So the only thing I'm going to be left with is 25x squared minus y squared. So we also took this xy and multiplied it by the denominator. Because this is split up as two separate terms, I would suggest distributing this xy. So you have xy times 5 over y minus xy times 1 over x. So hopefully this helps you in multiplying. We could put this over 1. For the first part, the y's are going to cancel because we can divide those. And for the second part, the x's are going to cancel. So our denominator is going to be 5x minus 1y. And our numerator is still 25x squared minus y squared. So if you saw the first part of this video, then you know this numerator is a difference of two squares, which means we could factor that. 5x minus y times 5x plus y. The denominator is also 5x minus y. And now those are the same. So we could divide numerator and denominator by the common term. And we're left with our answer, which is 5x plus y. So identifying the least common denominator and multiplying is going to give you a rational expression, which is going to make things easier going forward as the math gets a little more complicated.